Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday morning at NANOG, and it is 10 o'clock, not 9 o'clock. I'm in the wrong time zone, so I apologize for that. So as you may have noticed, I have Betty Burke up here with me. We asked her to give an encore presentation after yesterday. Ryan said a lot of nice things about Betty that I can't possibly match, so instead I'm going to tell a little story about the beginnings of NANOG. Anybody here remember NANOG? That was like 8 years ago. So I was reading through some old emails yesterday trying to remember what happened and when. In early 2010, we made the decision that it was time to become a separate standalone organization. Shortly after that, we realized that we were just a bunch of volunteers who had no idea how to run a conference. And thankfully, Betty agreed to step in and offer advice to us informally while we were trying to figure things out. But we realized that we had to actually hire somebody to do the work for us. So I think it was around the summer where we put out a solicitation for an executive director, an interim executive director, that actually becomes important in a moment, to help us tide through the formation in early years of NANOG. The first thought, of course, was, well, let's just hire Betty. But we took a step back and realized that we had to do this right. We only got one shot. We need to make sure we were making the right decision. So we ended up getting 12 resumes, I think it was, and interviewing 6 different candidates. And after all that, and by this time it's November, we went through all the candidates, found our top 2, one of whom was Betty, of course, and realized what we knew all along pretty much, but I had to validate that she was the right person for the job. Not only does she have the experience, the knowledge of the community, but we knew that she could take us forward into NANOG. Thankfully, also around then, we got a bridge loan from Aaron to pay a salary for executive director for the first year or so. So Betty could actually get real money from us and not just be a volunteer. Betty signed her contract in early January of 2011, and as an interim executive director, somewhere along the way, the interim title went away. She became a full-time employee, and here it is 7 or so years later. And anyways, thank you very much, Betty, for all you've done for us. And now I'd like to hear and see what you'd like to tell us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for giving me this opportunity. So a bit about my thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful watch that I received yesterday, picture of it. I couldn't talk yesterday, and I'm going to get through today. I promise, but thank you very much. I appreciate everything. So a bit about me. For those of you who know me today, you don't know how I got here. And I didn't want to give you just the technical pieces of our history, NANOG, or of the internet in particular, but myself and how I related. I don't know if you find it relevant or not. It's not a traditional NANOG talk, but it's about me. So I started at the University of Michigan Flint. The University of Michigan was a wonderful home to me, is a wonderful place today. There are 3 campuses, and I was lucky enough to work for many years on the Flint campus. And that's really where I began my collaboration work. I feel that my strongest strength in NANOG and in the community is my ability to bring people together. And I learned that at U of M Flint because it was a regional campus. And it needed to collaborate with the main campus and the other regional campus in Dearborn. And everything I learned in those early years was about building partnerships, from within the campus structure itself to working with the other universities in our local area. From building, buildings, if you will, to academic programs, onto building fiber projects within regions of the area. I was asked to come to Merit Network, where I was part of the University of Michigan, and that was also about collaboration. Eric Auberly found out that I was interested. He was the CEO, the president of Merit, at the time, and found out I was thinking of leaving my role as a technical person at U of M. And he said, well, come to work at Merit Network. I have this thing called the National Science Foundation projects, and maybe our Michigan regional network called MishNet. I don't know, you'll be happy. We'll find something for you to do. And he trusted and believed in me, and I believed in him that I would find a wonderful place to call home for a number of years at Merit. And I think that although there are a lot of people who hear about Merit in the regional network, it really is important to NANOG in lots of ways, both good and bad, but for me it was wonderful, mostly. Mm-hmm. I was also asked while I was there to join the Michigan Information Technology Center, which was the final stages, if you will, to the building infrastructure 4B. As part of MITC, I had the good fortune of building fiber into an advanced Tier 3 data center and building a conference center and managing a conference center, which helped me understand what it took to not only provide for, but be a customer of hotels and conference center business, and something I was a consumer but not a provider for. So it was an interesting period of time, and it was also important in our history because it was the corporate headquarters for Merit Network and Internet 2. So I had an opportunity to work with folks in Internet 2, which is an outgrowth of many of the projects in the early days of our network. As Steve said, I was a contractor to NANOG for a number of years. NANOG, when we started, as NUNOG, we didn't have any money, but thanks to our colleagues at Aaron, they gave us some money to hire me, and then over time, it looked like it was really gonna make it, so I turned from a contractor to an employee in about 2015. So NANOG now has some employees for the first time. Let me go here. The early days of networking, to me, involved a number of leased line circuits over an XZ25 network with primary and secondary communication processes. So if you really want to know about the history of all of that technology, if you visit merit.network or merit.org, merit.net, number of DNSs will take you to description of these early projects in the network. And NANOG, even nanog.org, has some of this history. My technical, even, I was asked yesterday, sort of, so are you just a business manager, or do you have some technical understanding of this technology? And I indicated that I feel I have enough technical background to be dangerous. Sort of like you can BS me a little bit, but not completely. The early days of my career, I was a traditional, not a traditional, I don't know if that's the right word, but I was a 1970s graduate from high school, and I didn't see myself as being someone involved in internet technology until about 77, 72, 73, right in the 70s, and I started my CS program. Computer science was a program of engineering science, which is very typical back when. There were real strong programs for networkers at that time in many college campus environments. So I was in physics when I helped build a computer science program. And my early days of programming were BASIC. Anybody remember BASIC? QBasic? I was real good. And COBOL and Fortran. And I really thought I was moving up the scale when I learned Pascal and assembly language. My early computers were Burroughs and Amdahl, a prime computer, and moving on to IBM mainframes. Much of that work was serial and done over key punches instead of PCs, and then PCs, single drives without, or dual drives without hard drives. In many ways, it was my version of the network. We didn't know what it was going to be, what it is today. As I became a manager of that technology, I learned enough to be a manager. On the campus environment, we developed a Corvus network. We decided that connecting to the Ann Arbor campus for certain applications and business development was hard on a single device. So we developed servers and single networks, and Token Ring became a part of our industry, and we eventually moved on to Novell networks. Anybody remember Novell? It was big. I thought I was really something. When I went to Ann Arbor, I was lucky enough to follow Ely Skerrick and Bill Norton. I shared an office with Bill when I came to Ann Arbor, and I came to Ann Arbor to work on AAA, authentication, accounting, and authorization software. And that was developed, if you know, at Merit. And one of the things they hired me to do when I came to Merit was work on implementing the dial-in network for customers in Michigan. So I used this proprietary software that they built to make that possible, and eventually worked in collaboration to spin that software off. It became something that Merit realized there was, it reached end of life within Michigan in our network, and it had value to the rest of the internet community, and it was one of those projects that became, as part of my work, a spin-off, became its own company. I also had the good fortune of beginning to work on Merit's internal systems, part of which we use today is some of the work that I got to do in the early days called Mailman, mail list services, and building Oracle, which was our first registration database. I also had the good fortune of following Bill, if you will, and realizing at the end of its life was the route servers. So how did we turn down the service that we had built over time in Merit because it was no longer as useful? So I was involved with a number of colleagues in turning down that service. At the same time, I had the good fortune of being asked to move the routing asset database used today to a commercial for-fee service. So again, collaboration and some of the background that I brought with me from working in a nonprofit environment helped to put the early fee structure in place for REDB. When I went to Internet 2, as I indicated, I was able to use my building construction background from buildings on a regional campus, from trailers to buildings, to actually building a very large $35 million construction of a new building with an advanced data center. And that was really what I feel as a great accomplishment for my days in Ann Arbor. As I indicated, I got to manage Conference Center, which I think really helps here at NANOG in terms of my interface and understanding of what it also means for people to service us. There's so many, I wrote a list actually in timeline of the people that have made a difference in my career and to NANOG, and it's too long. I'll forget someone. It's easier for me to say thank you to all of you. You know who you are, and you know that you made a difference to me. So I won't I'll try not. I think my biggest thank you at U of M Flint is my business and accounting folks, because that's where I started in my nonprofit experience, which is important to us. Didn't happen accidentally. I had a lot of experience given to me by being in the accounting and finance area at a nonprofit university called U of M. It was great. The presidents of Merit. Over time, there were 3 that I worked for. Most importantly, Eric Opperly and its board of Merit. And actually, the second, Mike McPherson, was there at a really important time for Merit and NANOG. I had the good fortune of being asked by Eric to get involved in this project called the MSFNet and NANOG when it began in 1994, which Elise told me was our first NANOG meeting. And somebody at NANOG found out that I was in charge ultimately of the work that Susan R. Harris and some others were doing, and at a NANOG meeting they came to find me. And the NANOG community said, we know you're in charge and we want more information, we want more control. And Mike McPherson and the board at Merit were able to believe in me and believe in all of you that you knew what you wanted to give some first transparency. So it was the first changes that we made to the charter of NANOG, trying to meet the needs of what NANOG was, but listening to the community that they wanted some more involvement in the process. And through that process of evolution, I like to call it, we developed a steering committee. And I went around, Steve was the first one, I said to Steve Feldman, some other folks like Marty Hannigan and Rodney Jaffe, if you're gonna speak up, you need to help. You need to volunteer to be on the steering committee. You need to volunteer to chair the program committee. We're no longer going to have merit appointments or merit only appointees to these roles, but we're actually gonna ask you to do some work. So thanks to many of them for the early work in volunteering on the steering committee and helping me help NANOG. And lots of things happened during that period of time. And again, you can go to the website. Don't quiz me on all the dates, although I have them. And in 2010, it was time for me to leave the University of Michigan. I had many jobs, many opportunities there, but it was time to leave. And at the same time, NANOG felt that it was time to, using Patrick's words, grow up and move away from home. And it's sort of, it is very meaningful. It was a good home. Merit was a great home to NANOG for a long time. It just needed to grow and make that final step and see if it was ready to go out on its own. And I was asked to come back to oversee the development and evolution of a while-stabilized, this new thing called NANOG that we like today, love today, called NANOG. And thank you to the NANOG Board of Directors who believed in me and all of the early members who believed in me to go from being in a loan situation to having almost $5 million in the bank. I couldn't do that by myself. The board couldn't do that, and all of you need a thank you. My takeaway, and through that process, although the board of directors is important to the process of NANOG, the program committee by far has been where my passion is. Making sure that the PC is enabled to have the autonomous ability to put together a program that is a program of peers. It's not something I decided, although I have to say I feel like I influenced them or influenced the PC a lot during those days because I knew why you had to be on your own for that very reason. But the program committee was really putting together a peer-reviewed panel, and they're really the backbone of NANOG. So what do I see today? Well, someone asked me, what is the internet? What's it gonna be? I don't know. You know, for me, 46 some years later, what I thought was the network is something beyond my belief. And so in another 30 years, I hope it's the same, beyond my belief of what it can be, because I think it's limitless. Thanks to all the engineers, the systems developers, social media development, cloud. Who would have known back when I started that we would have a cloud? Who would know what we're gonna have in 20 years? But it is the thoughtfulness and the carefulness of all of you that make it so that our grandchildren, mine especially, that I care about, have really something that's really an integral part of their life. I think in that development, you have to maintain a sense of social responsibility. My hope is that the government stays the government, and we try really hard as operators not to bring the politics into our life, that we don't have someone telling us how we have to build the next generation of the internet, and that we take care of some of those issues that we all know about existing today, but we take our own personal part in being responsible. That's the role I see of NANOG, is to make sure that as a collective, we all are in this thing together, that it's not one part of the industry called peering or equipment vendors or ISPs or software developers, but we're all of those. That's the fabric of the internet, and we all have a part. I think my last parting comment is that I hope all of you become engaged. It's not necessarily that you become a member, but you're engaged. What happened back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, let's not repeat. Let's not think that someone else is going to solve our problem. We have to all be engaged. As members, as participants, as speakers, engagement is the name of the game. Let the board of directors know how you feel. Let the program committee be the peers to decide if your presentation is great. One of the things I left the newcomers with yesterday was, how do you go from being an engaged newcomer to someone who's comfortable enough to stand in front of the NANOG community and talk? And the NANOG community, when I started, was limited to 100. It was easy to look out across this audience and speak to 100 people. Now you're looking at 1,000, 1,200. How do you feel comfortable enough to do that? When do you know you've arrived? And again, one of the things that the program committee is helping to do is help you find your voice. So as a newcomer, find your voice. As someone who's been here for a while, use your voice. This is the place. NANOG is unique. As far as I'm aware, it's one of the only places that truly is different. There's lots of conferences out there in all sorts of our industries, from a security conference to a peering conference to a local NOG, but really as something not owned by the policy registry, making registry, but in partnership with, NANOG is the place where operators of small, large companies alike can be equal partners with the board. And I hope you continue to find your voice and be engaged. And that's it. So if you have questions, I'll be happy with my trusty sheet of paper and give you the time. But again, I think that my issue is that we're not done. There's a lot to be built, a lot to talk about, and we do it together. And the board is just that, someone who organizes a lot of conversation, because you elect the board and you elect the voice. So be engaged. And the program is only as strong as all of you are willing to submit a presentation to the program committee. Otherwise, you have just Steve's impression of what's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty.
All right.
Thanks.
Any questions? Anyone want to know anything? Have a question for me, or are we done?
I think that's it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you again, and I look forward to coming to Vancouver
All right,
as
all
an
right.
attendee.
Everybody say thank you to Betty tonight at the Beer and Gear and Mahalo. Thank you
Good.
so much.
Thank you.